Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. Okay, let's talk about the Sagittarius solar eclipse, which is a pretty big deal given that we are, in the last month of 2021. There's loads going on, of course. I'm not going to cover all the transits for December. I have actually covered a few anyway, but I'll come back and do some more, time permitting. But the heat is on. The heat is on. It's things have just been cranked up so much more, as of even just a few days ago. This morning, yesterday actually, I received some concerned friends of mine sent me some emails relating to a situation that's occurring in Greece, because that's where I'm from and that's where my family is, and so on and so forth. And so that land is my motherland, my brothers and sisters, all my brothers and sisters are there, but the whole world is my brothers and sisters anyway. So I just want to share a little story with you, because this is very, very poignant and significant for the Saturn-Uranus square, which is happening it's the last quarter square, and it's the last square of this particular cycle, which we've had all year, right? And so let's just a quick recap, right, relative to the mythology of Kronos, Saturn. And there's a lot to this, but I'm only just going to give you the headline, as it were. So Saturn, which most of you are aware, corresponds to the earthly matters, to the earthly reality, to the structure of reality, to governments, corporations, systems, authorities, etc., to your whole conscious construct of reality, to how you build your reality. And then on the flip side of that coin, it's also where you are most limited, where you might experience tremendous fear, inhibition, suppression, oppression, depression, etc., etc. It's a very heavy energy when it's operating at the ego-based personality level. And of course, the much higher, more transcended, you could say, although that's not a word that's often used for Saturn, but in ancient old, medieval astrology, Saturn also corresponded to magicians. So Saturn has this other higher, more transcendent level to it, which is why when you see in esoteric astrology, for instance, we have the sea goat, right? And in mundane traditional astrology, we usually associate the mountain goat, which that within itself, has tremendous strength in its character. Anyway, the mythology to Saturn was that fundamentally he wanted to. There goes my mic again. I really need to get this fixed. He wanted to control everyone, everything, everywhere. That was his ultimate sort of drive, control. And the reason for that actually is because he feared being overtaken, all right, by the other gods, which most of them were his children. And so what did he do? Through that fear, and this is a sort of psychological fear that can be imprinted in our own psyche, right, for a number of different reasons, relative to being, conditioned from birth, having a heavy Saturn in our chart, having really Saturnian parents, whatever it may be, right? There's numerous examples of that. So Saturn swallowed all his children. He ate them, gobbled them up. You've got to understand the significance of that myth and just how powerful it is for our current times. I mean, it's always been active on this 3D earth plane anyway, but we are experiencing the most cataclysmic version of that right now. And we see it all around us with the coercion, tyranny, control, manipulation, liberties and freedoms consistently being, compromised or taken away, whatever it may be. And so, as I was saying, I received a couple of emails from some beautiful souls that, send me emails from time to time. And it was a headline about the state of things in Greece relative to the And basically, if you are over 60 years of age in Greece, they are now implementing a law that you are not required, but you're being forced to take it against your will. And if you don't, you'll be fined every single month a significant amount of money. Now, if that's not coercion, then I don't know what is, and I don't know why you're watching my videos if you don't think that's coercion. Okay, so naturally I was quite alarmed about that and thinking of my mum, because my mum lives there and I've got other family there, and of course I was thinking of the entire country as well. So I waited till I got my coffee this morning to call her, and as I was waiting there to grab my coffee, I just had this absolute crystal clear vision of Kronos, Saturn, the mythology, and the exact story of that happening on the earth plane right now. And to me, it was, I mean, it was like a clairvoyant, it's like the heavens opened and just my third eye just went boom and just saw everything, just so crystal clear. And it was a vision and it was a feeling as well. And it sort of made me laugh a little bit as well, because I thought, well, I mean, in essence, there's so many different layers in terms of perceptions and understanding of what is going on the earth plane. And there's different, beliefs and so on and so forth. And it's really hard to kind of cover every single ground, right? Relative to, this side of the fence, that side of the fence, this perception, that perception. So I'm just kind of trying to bring it in a roundabout general sort of way relative to the astrology and relative to my understanding and my perspective, right? So I'm standing there and I'm holding my coffee, and suddenly I saw Kronos, I saw Saturn, and I saw him swallowing his children. And to me, that translated to the fear porn that's being projected onto the earth plane at the moment relative to the program of coercion around, mandating and making it compulsory for people to engage in something that they don't want to, there's not enough evidence to support it. There hasn't been trials. You all know what I'm talking about, right? So we all should always have the right and choice as sovereign beings to choose what we want to do with our body, right? Nobody governs our body but God himself or herself. So that vision just, it really was quite profound. It was quite striking in my psyche. And I thought, well, out of that story of Kronos swallowing all his children, the only one that got away was Jupiter, right? And so that's a very important point in that story, because what does Jupiter correspond to, amongst many other things? It corresponds to wisdom and intuition, right? Jupiter rules Sag and Pisces. Both those signs are very intuitive signs. And Jupiter is the god of wisdom. So Jupiter got out of that story of being ingested by Saturn. And that's a very important point, because it's kind of reflecting, well, there's a group of people, on the earth, a group of humanity that are the Jupiterian types, right? That are using their wisdom to make a decision based on what their intuition is telling them. Because if you want to talk about facts and science and evidence, there isn't any there to actually qualify this program. There actually isn't. So that's not a personal opinion or a personal perspective. That's just a fact relative to science, evidence, and facts. Okay, so nobody can deny that or come and bash me for that, because that's just there. That's the reality. So people who are being the Jupiter types, in terms of that, mythology of Saturn swallowing his children, the Jupiter types are the ones that are using their intuition and wisdom to wait, to remain patient, to trust their inner standing and their intuition. That's what they are doing. And so I'm certainly one of those people, and I know many of you are as well. So and so for those that are being swallowed up by Saturn, that's not a judgment against people who have made those decisions. It's just a literal as above, so below, as within, so without. So the world is designed in a way to be represented by Saturn, consensus reality, status quo, the establishment. It's been like that for thousands of years. It's nothing new. And outside of that are the Uranian, Jupiterian souls. Could almost call them nomad souls. You know, they are the liberators, they are the awakeners, they are the shakers that shake things up. So that story of that's been playing out for 2 years, it just couldn't be more literal than the correspondence to the mythology of Kronos and Saturn, and thus the power of Saturn, right, relative to being incarnated in a physical body in a 3D reality. Anyway, that was a little moment of, it's not that I'd not thought of that before. I've thought of that virtually every single day the last 2 years. But what happened this morning was this incredible insight that came to me through. It's like I was there on Mount Olympus and I could see the whole thing happening. That's how real and close it was to me in that moment. It also gave me a little bit of encouragement because, you know, the last couple of weeks here again have just been so severely intense with the bill that basically has been passed, by the way, here in the state of Victoria, Australia, which is it's just a dictatorship bill, basically, which will have one man having complete control over 6 million people and can put you in jail without any police interference, judges interference. You know, there'll be nobody there to look at the other side, right? So that's just one example. You can be arrested and imprisoned if your characteristics fit within this criteria of there's some clause in this law that you can be imprisoned for your religious beliefs, for your sexual orientation. I mean, it just, there's, you know, it's 1940s, yeah, replaying. So there's a lot of shit going on. It's very heavy. It's very intense. Lots of protests, and the protests are not just going on here. They're going on worldwide, right? I saw probably about 20 videos last night, like 2-3 minute videos of protests going on in countries that I'd never even heard of, like literally. So I share this because I know a lot of my viewers, are on the same page. And for those of you that are not, that's okay. I respect your position as well. And I would ask you to respect mine. And I'll get to the solar eclipse in a minute and try and just stick to mainly the astrology around that. But I share this information because I'm a very passionate person about sovereignty and freedom and liberation and fairness and equality and justice. It's just how I'm built. It's just how I'm made. It's just how the divine source creation to all things, that's how I was created. So I've been given, a gift and a voice to speak and communicate. And so I will continue to speak and communicate with my passion around truth, light, justice, fairness, equality, sovereignty, right? And so that does not interfere with people's beliefs or choices. It's none of my business what choice people make or what beliefs they have. And my voice around this is because I actually deeply, deeply, deeply care about humanity. So this Saturn square Uranus, since we're on Saturn, let's just do a bit of a recap on this Saturn square Uranus. We have the final square aspect coming up. I think it's on the 20-something of December, so it's just a couple of weeks away. And so the way to understand that is, well, it started, earlier this year, and then, so that was the first square, and then we had another square sort of towards, later in the year, and now we're sort of middle towards later, second half of the year, and now we're about to have the third one. And that's the typical sort of sequence when planets form conjunction, square, or opposition for that matter, or trines and other aspects as well. But in this case, we're talking about a square. The square aspect is always dynamic. It can be cataclysmic, it brings about change and the necessary change, but not without working through the conflicting forces that arise both within us and externally as well. So this last square that's occurring it's the it's the closure of what's really been magnified, over the last 12 months particularly. And so the basic storyline is uh, Saturn, dictatorship, control, versus Uranus, which is liberation and freedom. And so at a bigger scale, again, that just simply points to having been under a patriarchal system for thousands of years, and the imbalance is just so severe that the cataclysmic nature of a combination of these two planets, which are, basically represent the complete opposite position, really at war. They're squaring each other, so they're sort of they're trying to stand in the same space. That's what a square aspect kind of mirrors. It's like two energies trying to occupy the same space, and they cannot. So one has to sort of come out of that triumph, if you like, right? And it will be Uranus. It will be Uranus, because Uranus it's a much more powerful energy from the point of view of it takes us out of our conditioned sort of mental, beliefs and attitudes and thought processes, and helps us wake up. It helps us become more authentic and more real. And we go through this just with the Uranus cycle in our life. The biggest sort of part to that is really the Uranus opposition, which occurs at around about 42 years of age. That's usually a very significant time in a person's life, because it's literally the window opening up saying to you, hello, are you being authentic with your life? Are you being true? Do you have insight into what you are doing? Are you liberated within yourself? That's the call of Uranus, right? So it shocks us out of our little nest and comfort zone and wakes us up into a higher truth, right? A more expanded understanding. And this is what's happening on a collective base. So it's like people are, the pushback that's going on is because Saturn is trying to suffocate everybody, and the Uranus component is not having it, and it's not going to have it, even though it appears, as it's presented on the exterior through the mainstream model of media, etc. They are going to paint the picture from a Saturnian perspective, and that Saturnian perspective, you've got to understand, it's all at the lowest level of Saturn. It's all born out of fear. And what has actually influenced people in most of the decisions they've made around this situation is through fear of so many different things: fear of losing their job, fear of not having money, all reasonable fears, fear of dying from this flu, things like that, right? So it's the fear, the psychological fear, Saturn, that's suffocating the human family, all right? And Uranus is just pushing that shit down, right? Basically. So some of us are here, some of us are here. Point is, this Saturn square Uranus, it's the final square coming in now. So it's kind of like the closure of this very intense journey that's been going on. So in other words, the show is not over yet, right? We've still got some more to see. So that's all I wanted to say about that. And so what I'll do now is I'll just bring up charts. So share my screen, and I'll just bring up the chart for this solar eclipse, and let's have a little look at that and start unpacking some features. Just very quickly, I only want to point to one thing here. This chart is the chart of the state premier of Victoria, Australia. So he's the individual that has been a dictator, and his name's Dan Andrews, and everyone calls him Dictator Andrews, right? Because he has been a dictator for the last 2 years. We've had the most severe lockdowns in this state and in this country, as you probably know, from the entire globe. This is the guy that now has been given power to imprison people for their beliefs, right? That's no joke. That's a fact. So that's where we're at. And the only thing I wanted to show you is this. Look at his north node. See his north node down here? It's in Capricorn, 26 degrees of Capricorn. So what's hitting that off? Transiting Pluto. So there it is in a nutshell. This is a soul that is on a mission to feel that he is in utter, complete control and power from a Capricorn level Saturn. And I mean, we could say so much more about his chart and so on and so forth, but this video is not about him. But I just wanted to share, for those of you that are in Australia and in Melbourne, you'll appreciate this a lot more. And for those of you that are not, it doesn't matter. You learn astrology by observing these things and drawing on these correlations. And this is an undeniable direct correlation of Pluto, which when Pluto is operating in unconscious human beings, it is all about the abuse of power, okay? And it's on his north node. And so he feels compelled to go in this, with this mission of greed of power. And that's why he's been pushing for this bill to get passed. And it's virtually there at the moment. So that aside, here is the solar eclipse chart. So the solar eclipse happens on the 4th of December, which will be the 3rd for you guys in the Northern Hemisphere. And there it is there, 12 degrees, 21 minutes. The Sabian symbol is quite interesting. If I have time, I'll perhaps read it. But the other things that I really want to talk about relative to this solar eclipse is that, well, it's the last eclipse of the year. That's one thing. We're in the last month of the year. We've got the Saturn square Uranus, which is the last square of this year. There was one other point there. It's gone, but it'll come back. Okay, so let's just have a look at some of the features of this solar eclipse. So there it is there, Sun, Moon, conjunction, new moon. It's a solar eclipse because it is next to the nodes. That's when we have lunar or solar eclipses, the nodes are always in play. That's what actually creates an eclipse, right? Now, this is a very interesting thing that I noticed. So if you see here, there is the goddess Vesta, okay, at 9 degrees, and there is Mercury at 15 degrees. Now they are conjunct the solar eclipse. And one thing that is just undeniable about solar eclipses is that, think about it like this, right? It is one short time where we experience the sun being blocked out, right? And so think about the earth, right? And all the different frequencies on the earth, because everything is frequency, everything is energy, right? So in the dark forces, which is the unconscious, there's a whole stream, life, world of things going on, and we connect with that when we go to sleep. But a solar eclipse is a very powerful thing, because what happens is, and Rudolf Steiner actually said this, and it's a really powerful way to explain what a solar eclipse is all about in a broader sort of sense. So what he said was that the dark forces that are buried into the earth, as it were, energetically, are basically released at the time of a solar eclipse. So the dark forces are revealed, right? All this energy and this frequency that's literally buried in the earth and contained in the earth in all the different ways that it is, during a solar eclipse, it just all gets released. And that could be, good in some ways, and that can be, just to use basic language, although I don't like to use the words good or bad, but let's just use, it could be really positive in certain ways, because what will happen is things that need to be seen and understood, where we need to have more insight into things, will experience the opportunity to have some further insight. And it is in Sag. And what is Sagittarius about? It is about wisdom. It is about insight, foresight as well. Foresight is a little bit more closely associated to Uranus, because Uranus is the body that helps us have foresight. In other words, people who are very Uranian, they see the future. They envision what's happening in the future before we get there. That's just the nature of Uranus. That's why it corresponds to right brain intuition, and that's why it also corresponds to what's called the long-term memory in our psychic structure. Short-term memory is Mercury, left brain, Gemini. Right brain, Sag, Jupiter, is intuition, insight, wisdom, and having Uranus corresponding to the right brain as well is that process of having memory about everything, meaning remembering every life you've had, every experience you've had, intuitively on a soul level and so forth. So this Sagittarius lunar eclipse, it's not an easy one. I've got to tell you, it's not an easy energy, because it's actually conjunct the fixed star Antares, okay? And the fixed star Antares has got a pretty bad reputation, but I'm going to throw a positive spin on it, right? It is one of the royal Persian stars, so it's quite a powerful, well-known star. It sits in the Scorpius constellation, so it has that Scorpio quality to it. It has a very Mars Scorpio quality and energy to it, and Mars was the god of war. In fact, Antares actually literally means, I'll tell you, it actually means rival of Ares. That's what Antares translates into, okay? And Ares was the Greek god of war. And I will read you what is said about the fixed star Antares in a moment. So the solar eclipse is very close to that fixed star, which is around about 15 degrees. And there is something else about that that's really significant in terms of fixed stars in the constellations. When they are at the 15th degree of a fixed sign, which is Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, and Aquarius, are the 4 fixed signs. When you see a fixed star at that degree, there's something really critical, right, about those degrees in the zodiac, okay? And relative to the fixed star that are representing that degree in the zodiac. So this is a big deal to have this fixed star on or the solar eclipse being on that fixed star, right? It's it really magnifies the energy so much more. And despite the fact that Sagittarius, by its very nature, is, generally optimistic and jovial, Jupiter, jovial, joyful, sees the positive in everything. And we really freaking need that at the moment, with just the fear porn that's going on, that's trying to kill everyone's kind of spirit and faith and hope about, what's happening in life and what's going to happen moving forward. We really need these Sag types to, and the fire signs as well, and the Jupiter, Aquarian, Uranian type of people who inject more sort of inspired visions into humanity, through their understanding and insights and so forth, even if they don't have astrological knowledge or metaphysical knowledge and wisdom and so forth. Their very nature is such that they will just naturally be more optimistic about the narrative and perspective of what's been playing out. So whilst there is all of that associated to Sagittarius, which kind of gives us a bit of hope, the Antares, fixed star that it's connecting to, look, it has 2 sides, virtually like everything else does, right? In life, we live in a world of duality. Every archetype symbol in the chart has a flip side to it, a shadow side, whatever term you'd like to use. So there's always 2 sides to every coin, right? And so this Persian star, in the hands of a very unconscious human being, let's say, or group of beings, has the capacity for serious destruction. I mean, it connects to the god of war, right? So that within itself can be quite alarming, if it was to be manifested or activated in that way by people who had particular power in their hands, for instance. On the other hand, though, what I keep reminding myself of is that there might be a certain level of layers of people that appear to be in control and in dominance of the earth plane and the world and the structure and nature of reality. But those group of people are the minority. It's the majority of the remainder of the people is the rest of humanity. So realistically, and this is not far fetched, you know, it's a reasonable thought process, I think. If humanity, you know, suddenly just had a Uranian moment and woke the fuck up, right, then those systems would all just they'd smash quicker than you can actually say your own name. So that's all we need. But will that happen? I doubt it. At this point in time, I doubt it. Is it happening sort of more quickly now than perhaps it has previously in this current incarnation? I'd say yes. I'd say for the amount of years that I've been on this planet, I've not seen such cataclysmic crisis on the earth plane relative to people having to have to wake the fuck up, basically. Sorry for the language, but you know, sometimes that word is just the most appropriate word to use for when you're trying to convey a very specific meaning that really needs that word in there, right? So that's, you know, this is where we're at. It's either, you know, wake up and get with the program in the game and realize what the hell's going on, or remain asleep, remain in the slumber. You know, it's just everyone's sort of choice, as it were. Okay, back to the sorry, I keep going back to that because it's just so there, now the thing that I wanted to address with Mercury and Vesta, I like Mercury being conjunct the solar eclipse. I think that's great because, you know, that brings our intellect into whatever this solar eclipse sort of highlights for us and brings to our attention. With the use of Mercury there, we can also bring in our intellect. It is in Sag, which means it's in his detriment, right? But that doesn't matter. You know, Mercury in Sag at a really more sort of transcendent kind of level, if you like, or a more inspirational, higher level. When it comes to wisdom and intuition, you know, that is bang, 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 bang right there. So Mercury in Sag can really help inspire our mental perception over things at the moment as well. And we really all need to dig so deep into, you know, inspiration, faith, trust, belief beyond the apparent narrative. If we stay at the level of where the apparent narrative is, we are, you know, you might as well just walk up and, you know, do this, right? We're just forget about it. So to remain connected to intuition, insight, foresight, wisdom, trust, faith, hope, we need to be in touch with Sag, Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus at the highest sort of levels. How do we do that? We all do that differently. We find our own way to connect to those archetypes and draw them out from within us, because we all have those archetypes in our birth chart. They're not somewhere out there. They are inside us, living, expressing, breathing, consciously being activated and integrated through our own level of consciousness and awareness. So that the activation, the opportunity, it's there for all of us equally, if we so wish to open ourselves up to the insights and understanding, right? So Mercury, I think, is really great for that reason, because it helps us really just use our mind and our intellect with in a way that we can communicate, receive, you know, information, whether that's through talking with people or listening to people, from the scope of Sag, right, which brings in a level, as I said, of being more mentally optimistic, regardless of how dark things might seem. So there is that. Mercury corresponds to siblings as well, right? And just as one of the things that it corresponds to. And I'm bringing that up for a specific reason, because the goddess Vesta, where's my, the goddess Vesta, which is just here, is in Sagittarius as well, and obviously right next to the sun, moon, and Mercury, right? Now, Vesta is one of the most mystical goddesses, one of the most complex goddesses, and I'm not going to go into her myth, but one thing that I will tell you, aside from her mystical, sexual, priestesshood, all these magnificent journeys that she can take us through, she also is the goddess that corresponds to sisters, specifically sisters, not brother and sister, specifically sisters, whereas Mercury can be brother and sister, brother and brother, sister and sister. But Vesta always can only correspond to sisters, okay? Now, the fact that we've got two symbols next to the solar eclipse, both corresponding to siblings, now, and given it is a solar eclipse and we have Antares there's something quite dark that's going to come out about siblings on the collective sort of platform of things, right? That's just a side note. It's neither here nor there. It may not even happen. I'd be very surprised if it didn't. So if you do hear something really dark and dodgy about, pair of siblings, please email me or please write it underneath this video. I'd love to know, because nothing's sort of come up from my attention here in this country thus far. But then again, I don't know everything that's going on everywhere. So, it might just come up. Remember, solar eclipses, the energy of these eclipses has about a 6-month orb, right? So we've been leading into this the last 3 months. And so given that Antares is with this solar eclipse, and Antares can correspond to anger, violence, aggression, war, control, dictatorship, all that sort of stuff, we've experienced that. We are still experiencing that, and we are seeing it very heavily, sort of projected, right, onto the material plane. And so this solar eclipse has already been active for 3 months, but it's going to be active for another 3 months moving forward at least. So it'll be very interesting to see what transpires out of this. Here's the positive thing about Antares being with this solar eclipse, provided we integrate this energy with mindfulness, attention, care, and awareness. It is an energy that can absolutely fuel you with tremendous courage. So I think given what we've been going through in our own unique personal way on the earth plane the last couple of years, a lot of people's courage, has diminished or being, sort of bashed quite a bit, right? So we need a frequency that can reunite us, if you like, and reignite inside us the deepest courage that we need, right, to trust and to remain authentic in our pathway, whatever that is for us, because it is different for each of us. So that would be the best possible outcome of this solar eclipse being conjunct Antares. It's the instilling and invoking and reigniting the brilliance of the true warrior spirit and courage that we can tune into and activate. Some people are just naturally like that. It's their signatures in their chart. Some people need more encouragement, whatever it is, but it is there for us to tap into if we so wish. That's what it can speak to on a more positive level. So I like that. The darker side is dictatorship, control, anger, violence, all that. Unfortunately, very, dark, shitty stuff that happens through very unconscious people who want to maintain control over the populace, right? That's just how it is. So the other thing that is happening here as well is that Neptune is actually forming a square to the nodes. And so therefore it is forming a square to the solar eclipse. Now, if we go back to what I said before, where, solar eclipses releases the darkness, if you like, for lack of a better word, the dark forces contained in, the ether of the earth, the bottom of the earth, right? Through that, though, can come a lot of insight that could be very helpful for us as well. Because think about it, right? We operate on a day-to-day basis with, 85% of what's inside us, contained in our, unconscious psyche, is there. It's unconscious, which means it's not in our conscious mind. So when we have things activate the unconscious, material rises, and that is for better or for worse, as it were, in terms of when it initially appears. Because when it initially confronts you, a piece of information or a memory or something, whatever it is, if it's very uncomfortable and very confronting, well, then that's what it is initially. But if we can understand what we need to understand through that, what is it that we need to work with this material being presented to us now? Why has this been revealed to me now? What do I need to see and understand in this? These are the questions that we can be asking and getting answers about, right? So at a more, transcended level, with Neptune being square. Now, look, the Neptune, of course, at the personality level is, at worst, it's complete and utter disillusionment, disappointment, and confusion. It, in no uncertain terms, is that, right? But on the other hand, it's also divine inspiration. It's like the curtain, the veil, sort of gets lifted, and you have this sense of, divine vision, inspiration, showing you, kind of holding your hand and walking with you and saying, you know what, this is the bigger vision right here. Take a look. It's not all doom and gloom. It's not as it appears. Not much is as it appears, as a matter of fact, on the earth plane. Not much is as it appears. It hardly ever is, as a matter of fact. We need to remember these things. So Neptune here can add a voice of divine inspiration for all of us to tune into. And look at the energy. It's Sagittarius, wisdom, optimism, faith, hope. Neptune, divine inspiration. Neptune here, it is square, so it's kind of like you've got to get through that square. You've got to tackle with that square, as it were, to integrate this energy. In other words, that might mean that you might have to be confronted with some sort of misconception that you've had about what you've been believing, what you've been thinking about, what you've been perceiving. And so now here comes the disappointment. Neptune, right? Crashing in through the square, trying to open your eyes to a different reality, a different perspective, right? So it just depends on how we're going to navigate this energy, how we are individually and personally going to work with this. But at the most highest transcended level, it's inspired vision. Neptune is the divine source creation to all things. It's oneness, one love, unconditional love, divine spirit, source creation, inspiration. So at the highest level, Neptune is, Neptune is probably the most difficult planet to integrate. It really is. Its effect is so subtle, but yet so powerful, equally powerful and subtle. And it can come at you in ways that it's like magic. It's like how magicians make things appear and disappear. And it's like being in blissed out states, where you're just sort of, for a short period of time, you are free from the chains of Saturn and the physical 3D reality and the heaviness of the burdens of what's been going on in life, and the pains that you hold in your heart, all that sort of stuff, right? So Neptune's bliss lifts us up into this level and frequency and vibration where it's really hard to describe actually, because I think each of us have our own sort of unique version of that, right? But as a general kind of sense, that's where Neptune takes us. And it's not that it physically lifts us up and, transports us from here to there to have that experience. It's an inner experience. That's what it is. It doesn't matter where you are, right? That's at the highest level. But, can we remain at that level all the time? No, we cannot, because the Earth is ruled by Saturn, and we have to work through Saturn's lessons. We just have to do it. But we also have to wake up Uranus. There's a particular reason why these planets are in the order that they are in. Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc., etc. Think about the order of the planets and what they describe on that archetypal, psychological, physical, emotional, psychic, all levels, right? They're in a particular order for a reason, right? That's not a coincidence. So Neptune is obvious. It's the last, Pluto is the last body, because that's the soul, right? That's the soul. So the other thing is, and look, this has been running along theme for a while. Ceres is there as well. And I've spoken about that, so I won't go into that. But Black Moon Lilith, right? Now she's very close to the opposition of the solar eclipse. Let me just clear that to kind of give you a more clearer perspective. Let me just move that there. I'm just not used to being on the left. I'm used to being on the right. Right brain, intuition, Jupiter. Okay, there's Black Moon Lilith forming an opposition to the solar eclipse. Now, the solar eclipse is 12 degrees. Black Moon Lilith is 14 degrees of Gemini. So there's an opposition there. I don't mind that opposition. I actually, frankly, quite like it, because I've got a strong Lilith in my chart. I really resonate with her frequency. She really represents autonomy and freedom, just to put it very, very simply. The story of Lilith has so many layers, and it's so complex and so on and so forth, but we're not here to go into the myth of Lilith, but just simply to acknowledge that she has a presence with this solar eclipse, and she's opposite it. So I think what she's going to bring up in a pretty magnified way through the energy of the solar eclipse is the because there's been so much censorship going on. I mean, the censorship that is going on is freaking out of this world. The amount of content that's been consistently removed, people's YouTube channels are getting shut down, other social platforms are being shut down, even websites that people have created here in this country relative to the laws that are being passed at the moment relative to this state. There was a particular website that was created just for the people of this state to actually, sign a petition if they wanted to, opposing the bill, right? And that website was actually removed like about a day, or not even a day, before they all went into Parliament to sit and actually debate over this bill. Now, how interesting and convenient is that? There were thousands of people who had gone to that website and had signed the petition, so it was removed, right? That's just one example. So there's shitloads, bucket loads of censorship going on everywhere, all around the world. Even it's just so beyond ridiculous. It's actually laughable, just how shit scared these entities are. So I think Lilith in Gemini, given that solar eclipses expose what's hidden, then Lilith in Gemini is going to bring in the voice, the communication, Gemini, the words, the information that needs to come up from the point of view of people having the right to speak and disseminate their opinion, and also information, right? Because Lilith doesn't take any shit, right? You can't tell Lilith to go away. She's a force to be reckoned with. She's a very powerful symbol. And in the sign of Gemini, it's all about the freedom of speech. That's what it's about. And so here she is lining up with the solar eclipse, and the solar eclipse is in Sag, which is about truth, wisdom, intuition, seeing the bigger picture, allowing the penny to drop and going, oh, wow, have I been asleep for that long? Yeah, perhaps you have. So all these symbols are, whilst they have elements to them that can be perhaps confronting or challenging, for certain people, that's okay. We don't grow and evolve if we don't get confronted and challenged. That's part of evolution, right? So it'll be fine at the end of the day. But that's my spin on these energies anyway. That's what I think is really speaking very strongly here. And also just with Neptune squaring, that can be, as I said before, divine inspiration, great for meditative practices and just receiving downloads and insights and really getting out of the linear left brain conditioned mind with the fear porn that's being, consistently thrown into people's faces and shoved down their throats, basically. Look, false programs always end up being destructed. They will fall. Sometimes it takes a long time, but they fall. The truth always is victorious, because the nature of truth, as in, again, I know truth is a pathless land, Krishnamurti, and I know people have different perspectives of truth. I get that, but I guess what I'm sort of trying to shoot my arrow towards, Sag, is what we could say perhaps is the ultimate truth. The ultimate truth is God's source creation to all things. It's it's not this perspective and that, it's the ultimate. So we have opportunity here to connect to that in some kind of way, to give us vision and inspiration in the most challenging and trying lives, I think, of our existence in this lifetime at least. So there you have it. I think that's all I wanted to say. Check. Yeah, and finally, just very simply, follow your intuition. Sag, intuition. Solar eclipse in Sag. Solar eclipse brings things, from the hidden realms into your vision and sight, so you can see, and Sag, to give you the bigger picture. So follow your intuition. It'll be challenged, because it'll be challenged by the external apparent, reality and narrative, and doesn't matter. By the way, just to finish up, I did ring my mum this morning because I was so worried about her with what I heard, with what's happening in Greece. And I was more worried than she was. And that was a very valuable lesson to me, because I tend to worry a lot about, well, people, especially people that I love and care about, friends, family, my beautiful little girl, Coco, and the human race in general. That's just how I'm built. I'm Sol Ray number 2 in esoteric astrology. That's Jupiter, Sun, Jupiter are the rulers to Ray number 2, and it's all about love, wisdom, and it's the love of humanity. So we are built the way we are built. Some people couldn't care less, couldn't give a shit about what's happening or whatever. That's fine, each to their own. We are who we are. Anyway, when I rang her, and as I said, I was more concerned than she was, and I was very proud of her, actually. She's a Capricorn, and sometimes I've seen the more shittier sides of Capricorn, but then sometimes I've seen the most amazing sides of Capricorn through her, and I find that I'm really proud of her. Anyway, she's just standing her ground. She just said, you know what, let them keep going with this game. That's fine. They can penalize us monthly, with whatever they want to penalize us with. I'm still standing my ground. And I was so relieved when I heard that. It made me cry. I was so happy, because it takes a lot of courage to take the position she's taken. She's locked out of society there at the moment as well, just like, millions of other Greeks would be as well, I suppose, so she's not the only one, but I'm, sort of using her as an example at the moment. So yeah, it takes balls. So I'm going to use that word. So on that note, follow your intuition. That's, Joseph Campbell actually said, follow your bliss. That is such a beautiful, beautiful statement, so profound. And think about the word bliss, because bliss corresponds to Neptune. So he's saying, follow your bliss. Now, there can be many interpretations on that, but my interpretation would be follow your bliss means stay connected to the divine source. Follow that divine source link. Let it light your eye up. Let it enable you to see. Let it allow it to keep you revived and connected daily with spirit. You know, that's what I see as follow your bliss. Whereas on a mundane personality level, some people might think that's got to do with, you know, what we do here physically on the earth plane. It's got not a lot to do with that, in my opinion. There can be blissful things that we do, you know, on the earth plane for sure. I'm not saying there isn't. But at the highest, more transcended level, that's what follow your bliss means for me. And I'll leave you with follow your bliss, follow your intuition. Much love, much blessings, and see you all soon. And thank you so much for your beautiful messages, beautiful emails. I love you all very much, and take care. Bye.